Bill Andrews to you. Bill is the president of Serum Sciences. He's an award-winning microbiologist who discovered the enzyme telomerase, and you'll hear why this is one of the biggest medical breakthroughs of all time a little later during this webinar. He's called the man who would stop time by Popular Science magazine, and he's named in over 50 US patents, which is unheard of for any biologist. He's created the world's strongest telomerase inducer ever, which you'll be hearing a lot more about as well too. And he really is leading the way in the fight against aging and all age-related diseases. I'd also like to welcome Catherine Kennard, who's an award-winning actress for television and theatre roles. She's well known for her TV roles in Underbelly and Spartacus, Nothing Trivial, Shortland Street, and many, many more. She's a wonderful animal rights activist. She supports at-risk children and young struggling mothers, and we're delighted that she is recognised now as the face of One Truth 818. Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Degar-Sanders. I'm the director of Chase Life Extension Foundation. We provide funding for research into curing aging, and we're also the creators of the One Truth 818 range, which I have formulated for everyone, the 818 Serum. And I am your host for today. Firstly, to all of our guests out there, thank you for the questions that you have already posted ahead of time. It was great to see your enthusiasm there. And we're going to be answering some of those pre-posted questions during the interviews that I do with our guests here. Any that you post during the webinar, we will do our best to answer every single one of them afterwards. So just under your video screen where you're seeing me right now, that's where you can post some questions as they pop into your mind, and we will answer them afterwards. Now, the science and breakthroughs that we are about to discover on this call are amazing to all of humankind, but they're also really applicable to people who own anti-aging, skincare, and beauty businesses to be right at the forefront of all of this technology. So if you are from one of those businesses, please stay with us until the end, because we will have a very special offer that we can reveal to you at the end of this webinar. So firstly, Bill, I'll take a breath. That was quite an introduction for everybody. Bill, could you start, please, by giving us just a basics and an outline of what telomeres are?
Well, let me begin with simply saying that a lot of people believe that we all age the same way as old trucks that sit in a field age. You know, they think we age because of the exposure to the sun, the wind, the rain, etc. But we're not like old trucks sitting in a field. We actually have cells in our skin that can divide. So when we get a sunburn and we kill cells in our skin, other cells can divide to replace those cells. And so the question is, why do we age if we don't have the same kind of problems as an old truck sitting in a field? Well, it turns out it was discovered in the 1960s that human cells actually can't continue to divide forever. They actually have a limit to how many times they can divide. And I like to think of it like every time a cell divides, it like takes a ride ticket, you know, like a ticket off a roll of tickets for rides at an amusement park, let's say. Okay, so it's like they're given a certain amount of tickets. Every time they divide, they take a ticket away, and eventually they run out of tickets, and the cells can no longer divide after that. And it turns out that we have now discovered that those ride tickets are actually found at the very tips of our chromosomes. And so every cell in our body is given a certain number of ride tickets, and every time the cells divide, it loses a ride ticket, and when they get down to essentially 0 ride tickets, they can't divide anymore. And actually, when they start to get down to just a few ride tickets, our cells lose the ability to even do a lot of different functions. So it's appearing that that's now how we age, and we know this from studies where we figured out how to add more ride tickets back, or essentially lengthen the telomeres. So if you think about it, a human is made up of cells. Our skin is made up of our cells, but so is the rest of us. We are essentially mostly cells, and cells are really microscopic little things. When you zoom in, you can see cells in the microscope, and then inside the cells, there's the nuclei, and then inside the nuclei are found our chromosomes. And at the tips of the chromosomes, is where the telomeres are, and the chromosomes are where our genes are. That gives us our hair color, our eye color, all that kind of stuff. But now it's at the very tips of these chromosomes that the telomeres, we have noticed since like the 1970s, that they get shorter as you age. This is because they're losing these ride tickets, as I'd mentioned. And it got so studied, scientists all over the world were studying so much that we started finding out that people can actually measure the length of telomeres and tell somebody how old they are. And more importantly, they can tell them how long it'll be before they die of old age. So the telomeres started becoming something that was considered really important. But people weren't really clear whether this was a result of aging or actually a cause of aging. And that was where I got involved. So the telomeres are at the very tips of our chromosomes, and I ended up discovering an enzyme that would lengthen them called telomerase. But simply, I can talk more about it later, but simply that's the basics of what it is. We have essentially a clock of aging that's ticking, and it's found at the tips of all of our chromosomes, and they're called telomeres.
Great, thank you, Bill. And I think that's a really great recap for anyone who has heard of telomere biology before, but also for those of you who have never heard of it, Bill is the perfect person to hear it straight from the man's mouth himself. Bill, anyone in the field of anti-aging knows how well respected you are, and that you know exactly what you're talking about. But you are not the only person who has been proving these concepts in the scientific world. Are you able to share with others some of the proofs of concept that some of your colleagues and people around the world have also been doing to corroborate what you're saying about telomeres being, are they the cause of aging or just a sort of it? What are the proofs of concept on that, Bill?
Well, first it started with my lab when I was still working at a company called Geron Corporation. We discovered, the thing was that we saw that telomeres were shortening in every cell of the body, but the only exception was our reproductive cells. Our reproductive cells, when those cells divided, they weren't essentially losing ride tickets. The telomeres weren't getting shorter. And so it was during my research there with a team of scientists that we discovered that our reproductive cells produce an enzyme called telomerase. And telomerase actually adds ride tickets back or lengthens the telomeres. So what we did is we then started taking this telomerase enzyme and start putting it into other cells of the body, like skin cells grown in a petri dish. And we were able to demonstrate that these cells not only stopped losing the ride tickets, their telomeres stopped getting shorter, they actually got a lot longer. And by every method of measurement, the cells got younger. Looking at all the different genes that are affected by, that have been shown in lots of studies to be biomarkers of aging, we saw that all these genes reversed to being the young type of genes. And so by every, as I said, method of measurement that we can imagine, the cells got younger just by lengthening the telomeres. Well, that was the first, let's say, proof of concept that telomere shortening wasn't a result of aging, it was actually the cause of aging. And so then scientists, including scientists working with me, just about when I was leaving Geron to start my own company, they grew human skin on the back of a mouse and demonstrated that when they lengthened the telomeres there, the skin got younger by every method of measurement. So not only had we shown that human cells in a petri dish got younger, but even skin, let's say a tissue on another animal got younger. Now, all this work was done at another company, and but it even got even better when people like Dr. Rhonda Pinnell bred mice that he could turn the telomerase gene on and off inside of all their cells, and he was able to show that when he produced telomerase in the cells of really old mice, these mice got young in every way imaginable. These mice, they were so old they could barely walk around. Their hair was turning gray. Their hair was falling out. They couldn't reproduce. Their brains were deteriorating. They couldn't remember how to go through a maze. that they used to be able to go through. Organs were getting smaller, their sense of smell was disappearing. There was a whole bunch of different things that were looked at. And when they lengthened these telomeres, these really old mice became young in every way imaginable. They could breed again, they could remember how to do things, their sense of smell came back, their hair came back, they looked like young and they acted like young mice in every way. And now this has recently been repeated by another lab in Spain, headed up by Dr. Maria Blasco. And I mean, I'd like to be able to say that these things are available for humans right now, but they required some pretty drastic techniques of gene therapy that really we wouldn't want to do on humans yet. But hopefully in the near future we will have ways to do this that will work really effectively on humans. But those are the proof of concepts that I've just mentioned. And I'm just looking forward to the day when we can actually treat a human and see the same kind of results.
Great. You've actually you've answered Karen Sinclair's question, which was whether or not this technology would be applicable for every cell in the body. And what you've just explained to us is that if the human body is made of cells, and if you're affecting one, you're actually affecting all of them, and that when these technologies do move to humans, we could have the expectation, like Ron DePinto proved with the mice, that every representation of an age marker biologically would be reversed. Is that correct?
Yes, and for the moment, when we're talking about the skin cream, we're talking because of the skin cream only because it's actually been approved for use, whereas other things, eventually this chemical that's in the skin cream will be approved for use in other ways too, but right now it's approved just for skin.
Okay, so this chemical that you mentioned in the skin cream is the furthest that your lab has gotten with technology to be reversing age in humans, TAM818. Would you tell us a little bit about that, please, Bill?
Well, we've been doing this research since 1999, developing different assays, high throughput drug screening, which allows us to test thousands of chemicals a day. And we've been looking at this for a long time. And we've tested like probably close to 400,000 different chemicals. A lot of them were just random, but many of them were intentionally designed by us to increase potency and stuff. But in, let's say, 2008, 2007 probably, we discovered our very first chemical that would induce telomerase, and that allowed us to, and when I say induce telomerase, what I'm saying is that every cell in our body has a gene that's designed to produce telomerase, so that genes are like, they're the things that give us our hair color, eye color, things like that, where there's also a gene that is responsible for producing telomerase. And genes are controlled by like something like a light switch, just like turns your lights on and off in your room. So the gene is turned off in all of our cells, and I could spend an hour explaining why that is, but it turns out it's nothing harmful at all. It's actually very healthy for us to turn it back on. And we found chemicals that would actually get in and turn that gene back on. And so we found genes, and then we found chemicals that would do this, and we started designing new chemicals more and more. We first, let's say, we found things that were maybe 0.1% as strong as what we needed in order to reverse aging. Then we found stronger stuff, and then stronger stuff, and we finally got up to 1%, and then we got to 2%, then we got to 5%. And then our strongest so far is this, we call it C0314818, because it was the 314,818th chemical we tested. And that gives us about 16% of the telomerase activity that we think we need to actually turn us all into 24-year-olds again. But we're extrapolating, we can see that we're on an upward trend, and we could be there within a year. But unfortunately, right about the time we discovered C0314818, the global financial crisis just wiped out investors' ability to invest in their research anymore. And so it's been a struggle ever since, and we've been hanging in there. But one of the things that we're doing with this C0314818 is we've licensed it to Rachel's company, Clef, and they modified it further to improve safety and efficacy and et cetera, and they put it into the skin cream. And as a result, we're getting a royalty from the skin cream that is being used to fund our research to make more and more. So I should qualify at this point, I'm a scientist. You know, I can do everything about scientists. I'm not really a marketer. That's Rachel's department. I will tell you that I do use One Truth 818 myself every day, twice a day, because I believe in the science. The science is just unbelievably great. But in terms of trying to describe more about the skin cream and stuff and the marketing and et cetera, I would have to turn it over to Rachel.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill. So that's really where mine and Bill's stories connect. And just a quick little history of the C043818 is that it actually sat in a cupboard for years. So when Bill was saying they discovered it several years ago, you might be thinking, well, I've only heard about it in One Truth in the last couple of years. It got popped in the cupboard because it was just deemed way too expensive to be useful for anything. And also at 16%, the scientists at Serum Sciences figured that it wouldn't be enough to show anything. So the initial testing was done on human fibroblast skin cells. And there was a kind of idea that this molecule would be perfect for a skin cream, but at the price and at 16%, it was literally just put in the cupboard. Well, I was given the license for this molecule, and we played around with it a little bit, and I've been in the beauty industry for over 22 years now. I've tried everything on my face, and I've got to tell you, within 3 weeks of using this molecule on my skin, I noticed a change to the point where we decided to invest $250,000. I worked with a cosmetic scientist and I formulated the One Truth 818 serum, and then I sent it to Abich Laboratories in Italy to have it independently tested, which is really nerve-wracking because independent means just that. You have no idea what is going to come back at you, and if they send something back and they say, hey, it's just average, then that's it. You like it or lump it, really. So anyway, the results that we got back were phenomenal and stunning, and I proudly say that we surprised Bill and the other scientists up at Sierra, because at the 16%, what they were expecting to see was nothing. That, you know, if Catherine and I were, you know, if I was using it and Catherine wasn't, in 10 years' time, I would look like I had aged a lot less than Catherine. But it was just going to be slowing down the rate of aging. And that makes logical sense to us at the time. But what we were seeing was actual age reversal. And during the time it took to formulate it and send it up to Italy to get it tested, more research came back about telomerase preferentially lengthening the critically short telomeres. So up until that point, most scientists were really concerned around the average length of telomeres and thought that that was the best marker to go by. Well, this research came out and it proved that the critically short telomeres and the amount of critically short telomeres you've got is much more important than the average length of your telomeres. And that when you express or induce telomerase, it's going to preferentially lengthen those shorter ones first. So that explains why at 16% we're actually seeing age reversal, which was just awesome. So after independently testing it in Italy on 100 people, that was amazing to get those results back. Then we needed some real-world testing as well. I could theoretically and in a very academic way explain all the ingredients to people and why it worked, but when I was asked simple questions like, will it work on pigmentation, will it lift and firm my eyelids, you know, all those sorts of questions, I didn't really have an answer to them because I hadn't had that one-on-one kind of capability to talk to people. So we also ran a trial in New Zealand with another 40 people as well. Now, we got some great feedback from that, and a lot of it you can see on the website. If you head there, you can see the before and the afters. What I didn't find out is of those 140 people, not one of them had a reaction to the product. So when we went to market, and the first country that we actually launched in was about 2.5 years ago now, in Australia, I had no idea if anybody would have any reactions whatsoever to One Truth 818. It was strengthening sensitive skin, and it was really great for areas of broken capillaries and that sort of thing, so great for sensitized skin. But nobody had had a reaction to it. So we've since found that if anyone is having a slight kind of irritation, it's from some of the plant ingredients in there, we assume, because it's not a normal occurrence. So we got some really great feedback from that. I just have a question here, forgive me while I read it, but it is for me. It's from Donna Jean Shirley, and she says that she's using her One Truth and her skin is still needing moisturizing, and she's surprised by that. Donna Jean, One Truth 818 is actually a serum. So it doesn't have any exclusive ingredients in there that are meant to stay sitting on the skin. A serum is just made to get instantly into that skin. And what we did when we took the molecule from Sierra Sciences and got the license for that, we did further medicinal chemistry on it, and then we also popped it into a liposome so that we would get really deep penetration into the skin of that liposome. So all of the ingredients in the serum hydrate and we fix the Raines barrier in the skin, and they're there to help deliver the molecule deeper into the skin. We don't have ingredients there that are made to be left on top of your skin. So many people do find that they still need a moisturizer over top, and that's quite normal. The other question she asks is, the more you use, the better it is that right? And in essence, yes. Myself and all of the trial participants that you'll see on the website use it twice a day, and we get those results twice a day. But if you're going to be using it more often, you will be inducing telomerase more often, and you will see even faster results. So if you're getting married in 3 days' time, start lathering it on every 10 minutes. But other than that, twice a day should be just fine. Now, I mentioned how great it was to have people using it who we could interact with and learn more from when it came to a marriage of this amazing science into a commercial product. And to that end, I'd like to ask some questions of my great friend, Catherine Kennard, who about a year ago when we had Bill come to New Zealand and we had a day full of media, and I thought, gosh, how am I going to be interviewed and hosted at the same time? So I asked my beautiful friend, actress Catherine Kennard, to come along and do that for us. And so she heard the science from Bill, I think, about 7 times that day, and very patiently absorbed it all in. And then we spoke afterwards, and she said, look, I'd really like to be involved. The science is amazing, and it ticked a lot of other boxes for Catherine as well too. So Catherine, can you just, talking about your skin, you're sitting there looking absolutely stunning as always. You're probably asked by so many companies to represent their product, to endorse them, to be part of them. What made you say yes to One Truth?
Well, when you're asked to endorse any product, for me, it's about the owners of the product, obviously, where it's come from. The integrity behind the product, to me, is the most important thing. So, I mean, just look at Rachel's face and Bill. You're looking amazing. You know, I mean, for me, the proof is in the pudding. You've got to, if somebody's asking me to endorse a skin product, and I just look at their skin and go, okay, well, if you've been using it for a while now, you know, that's telling me everything. And looking at Rachel and her husband Chris, and that was my first, like, well, something's got to be good in this product, you know.
Thank you.
And then of course, then it's about using it on my own skin and trialing it for a while, and just to see, because I've had enough of my own skin issues throughout my life, and my skin's the first to react to anything that it doesn't like, whether it's organic or not, or, you know, natural or not. And so that was, of course, the non-reaction, which you were talking about earlier, Rachel, for me was like a number, you know, a clear sign that we were onto a good thing as well. Obviously, listening to Bill all that time on that day that we met, and yeah, I mean, the science behind it makes total sense to me. Yeah, I mean, it's when you listen, you're like, oh, really? It's kind of hard to initially to believe it, but then then it is believable, and it clearly is true, because it clearly is making a difference. And so I 100% believe his science, and that's important. But it's not just the 818 as well. It's the blend of what's in the serum. It's not just that it has the anti-aging. It's also how it feels on the skin, and all the other beautiful ingredients inside of it. And of course, there's no animal testing, which is a big thing for me. And yes, I mean, I am supportive of natural as much as possible, natural products. And I think this is 95%, above, more than 95% natural. So yeah, I mean, there has to be a lot of boxes that get ticked for me to endorse something, and so that's why all these boxes got ticked with this product.
And Catherine, you mentioned that you had some sensitivities. So what has your experience of using One Truth 818 serum been?
Well, yes, I mean, over the last, in my 20s and 30s, I actually had terrible skin. I had acne, I had rashes, and I was working in the film industry. So it was a very delicate issue for me, having to go on screen and my skin not being good. Back in the 90s, film wasn't HD, right? So you could get away with covering with fairly heavy makeup. But now, because everything's in HD, you can't get away with anything. The less makeup you wear, the better. Yeah. So your skin just has to, and the pressure to have good skin, of course, is got worse and worse. So yes, I had bad skin when I was younger, and I thought you grow out of it, but I didn't. I was close to my 40s, and things were just starting to settle down a little bit for me. I spent thousands of dollars on products, high-end products, and down to like very natural, make it in your own home products, just to see what will work, what will work for me, and really, really struggled. I've spent so much money, it's ridiculous. But what I found straight away with One Truth is it was like drinking a glass of water. So, and it still feels like after 1 year, every time I put it on morning and night, it's like I'm drinking my water, There's nothing, I don't feel sensitive at all. And usually you can feel after a while, you'll start getting a little reaction. And especially around the eyes. For me, it's probably what's amazing about this product is that I don't have to have an eye serum. I don't have to have all these different things. As long as I've got that. And yes, a little bit of moisturizer on top if needed, depending on the time of the year, obviously. This is what's amazing, and my eyes especially give it away when it comes to sensitivity. My eyes will always show little reactions, and this is where it's like, this product's just amazing.
Cool, thank you. And look, just on that note, because obviously, Catherine's not the only person who's, had a real-world experience of it. But I just want to backtrack slightly to the Italian independent testing that we had done, and simply because it backs up everything that Catherine has been saying, as well as the science that Bill has said. And we went above and beyond. You may have heard me mention that we had 100 volunteers. Now, when you're flicking through your fashion magazines, if you actually read the little fine print down the bottom, as I do, of course, these percentages that these massive skincare companies are bandying around, when you look at the little disclaimer down the bottom, it will say something like a 14-day trial on 10 women. And the claims that they're making are, this made my skin feel smoother. It's all emotive. None of it is measurable and tangible. So the tests that we had done, because I didn't want anybody to be able to dispute the evidence that we were going to be providing, they were performed by doctors, and they're clinical, and they're all measured. And you can find those on our websites. We don't try to hide any of our proof and evidence because we are very proud of it and we stand behind it. So if you want to see more of that evidence, especially if you are from one of those anti-aging businesses that I spoke about before, this is going to be the point of difference for you for One Truth, is that you can present all of that clinical information where we can show the measured amounts that we have reduced wrinkles and induced collagen by an elastin, as well as all those wonderful before and after shots too. So do make sure that you have a look at those. And thank you, Catherine, for sharing your story. Catherine and I have been friends for over 20 years now, and I remember those days where, Catherine was just on screen filming every single day, and it's heartbreaking when you feel you're turning up and you're not looking good, because that public face is a huge part of what you do. And being in the beauty industry for a very long time myself, and I used to have skin issues as well. If I had to turn up to work and I was performing skin treatments all day, and my skin was looking a lot worse for wear, no good lighting in the world can hide that when your client is this far from you. So it is devastating for us as well when we have those skin issues. The confidence that you can have from being able to improve that skin is enormous. So thank you for sharing that with us as well, Catherine. And now I'm going to jump to a few of the questions that we had pre-posted before the webinar. One of them here, and this is from Bedrinruth Brathy, and this is for you, Bill. It says, could it be applied to improve sports performance? You're an ultra runner. What are the potentials and limitations of the human body to perform?
Well, there's actually no studies have been done officially yet, but I personally have seen tremendous improvement in my ultramarathon running when I first started taking, quote, telomerase inducers. So One Truth 818 is going to be working on the skin, but there's weaker things, natural products that are probably like 300 times weaker than One Truth 818 that you can get nowadays, that are supplements you can swallow. And when I first started taking those, I saw my performance in 50-mile races and 100-mile races, which would be like 180 kilometers to 160 kilometer races, improved tremendously. I typically always have been the back of the pack runner. I was glad to just finish these long distance races, but suddenly, within 3 weeks after I started taking telomerase inducers to lengthen telomeres, or at least lengthen the shortest ones, I started seeing my performance get so great that I started finishing the top 10, top 10%, sometimes the top 10 overall, and win my age group. And I'm 64 years old now, and I am still slaughtering all the 50-year-olds and many of the 40-year-olds in many of my races. So I do believe that it's helping a lot, but we don't have any real data on it because there really isn't a lot of strong telomerase inducers available on the market yet to actually start doing a study. I can tell you, the reverse is also true. It turns out that endurance exercise actually helps keep your telomeres long. So endurance exercise and taking a telomerase inducer is going to be work in a double way. It's going to give you twice the benefits. So yeah, I do believe that it's going to help with sports, but we don't have data to support it yet.
Great. Hey, I have a couple questions, more questions here too, but just at this point, to you folks who are listening to us, if you do have a question, please, just below the video of us, just pop your question in there and I'll do our best to get to it for you. Another one for you, Bill, from Samville. What are the scientific breakthroughs necessary, beg your pardon, to move down the path towards human immortality?
You know, I think that most of the scientists in my field know exactly what to do. It's not the breakthroughs that we need, it's the funding that we need. And that's one of the reasons I'm so glad to see that One Truth 818 is providing funding to our research. Whenever anybody buys a bottle, a certain amount of royalty from that goes directly to our research. But it's what we need to do is research to develop stronger telomerase inducers. And if I was to graph our progress beginning from like 1999 to 2008, when the global financial crisis hit, you can see a pretty linear line of getting stronger and stronger telomerase inducers. And I predict that we would be at something, have something potent enough to actually start showing overall age reversal. So not just seeing your skin look younger and your hair getting better color, but you start looking and feeling young in every way imaginable. I think we're 1 to 3 years away from that. And it really isn't a question of any discoveries as much as it is getting the funding to do the work that we know we need to do. And you know, we're not the only ones working on trying to cure the aging process. And some other people have some great ideas too, which I think will be, you know, I think lengthening telomeres will probably cover everything, but other people are working on things too, and they just need the funding too. So it's pretty much just funding.
Great. I've just seen another question pop up here from Leslie. Thank you, Leslie. It says, we use telomerase 818 in combination with a factor which stimulates cell production. In this case, is this rapid cellular reproduction increasing the shortening of the telomeres beyond the capacity of TAM818 to extend telomere life? Did you want to take that one, Bill?
Well, I could say I don't know the answer to that. Again, because we haven't actually done that study. We could do that study, but again, funding is the limitation. So all we'd have to do is grow skin cells in a petri dish in the absence or presence of epidermal growth factor, and in the presence or absence of TAM818 to actually answer that question. But I personally think that if epidermal growth factor is something that actually helps make cells at least appear younger, I think people should still do it, even if the telomeres are getting shorter, because I think we're only talking 1 to 3 years away from having something that would be able to undo anything that that might happen from having shorter telomeres. So you know, I always say, what's the point of living a long time if you're not living? So if there's something you're doing that makes you feel good or look good, but it actually is accelerating your telomere shortening, do it anyway, and we'll have a fix for it soon. Rachel.
Thanks, Bill. And actually, to Leslie, because I get asked that a lot of times on very specific treatments. You know, what do you think about, you know, chemical peels? What do you think about microdermabrasion? All those things that are actually their whole purpose is to increase cell turnover. And you know, in a nutshell, what we've learned from Bill is that cell division equals aging. And so if you're speeding up that cell division, you're actually speeding up aging. But I mimic what Bill is saying, is that if it's making you look good and that's making you feel better about yourself, you know, Catherine and I spoke about that connection between how you look and how you feel, then I would never tell you to stop performing those treatments or suggest that people stop doing them. But what I would say is, as an insurance policy, you absolutely must be inducing that telomerase topically in those cells so that you can be making sure that you balance it out. You know, telomerase and cell division is a tug of war, and if you're just having them shorten and shorten and shorten and not going back the other way, then you probably will regret it in 10 or 15 years' time. But there is that product now, which wasn't available before, which can help with the tug of war and pull it back the other way. So if you want to be doing those kinds of treatments, I just say you absolutely 100% must be balancing it with a telomerase inducer, and One Truth 818 is the very strongest in the world. There's actually only one other product on the market that says that they can induce telomerase topically, and clinical published data shows that One Truth 818 is 300 to 800 times stronger than that. So please be recommending to all of your clients and to yourself to be using your One Truth 818 serum if you're doing all of those procedures. Charlene Miller says that she just wants to be rubbing One Truth all over her body, but she can't quite afford to do that. And that's a funny question I do get asked when I'm presenting this sometimes. You know, people will say, I was doing my face and it felt great, so obviously now I come down to my neck and now I'm doing my décolletage and everything is firming and lifting, and so I looked a little bit lower and thought, can I keep going? You know, where do I stop? Now, the fact that One Truth is a prestige price at the moment, I can't say that that's not going to change, to be honest. Just to give you an idea, the very first sample that was made was a 50-gram sample, and it cost $500,000 US. Hence why it got put in the cupboard and deemed way too expensive. Now, luckily for us, the efficacy of the TAM818 molecule is so strong that we don't need to be putting 100 grams of it into each bottle of skin cream. You know, the efficacy that you can get from it doesn't need that much. So we're actually kind of lucky that it's on a commercial scale whatsoever, considering how expensive it is. We may be working on a body cream. There was another question posted earlier saying, what other products can I be expecting to see this in? I can tell you I've been given stability results on a professional use only gel. So that's for your estheticians, your therapists, your plastic surgeons to be using after treatments to help induce that telomerase and heal, speed up that wound healing process, which inducing telomerase has been proven to do. We also have a spritz which will be coming on the market within the next few months, and that's completely oil-free. We know that there are a lot of people who want to be doing anti-aging treatments but who still have quite oily skin. Now, the serum is a really oil-rich formula. It's full of phospholipids, macadamia oil, jojoba oil. Don't get me wrong, it's like silk. It just sinks straight into your skin, but it is a very oil-rich formula. And for some people, that's too strong. So we're going to be having that spritz come out. So for people who want to keep the oil off their skin, and for those One Truth junkies out there, you can spritz and then you can use your serum over top as well. So we've got it all covered. So those are the products that you can look forward to seeing come soon. Now, excuse me, I'm just going to quickly, we are answering all of these questions live. Could the application of TAM818 directly onto the scalp help encourage hair growth? And that's from Dan. We haven't done any studies. Bill, would you know the answer to that?
Well, I have heard. I'm getting an echo. Let's say I have heard that some people taking some of the supplements have seen hair growth come back. Some of those weaker supplements, but I think it's going to depend largely on why you are losing hair. If you're losing hair, like a male pattern baldness is typically caused by a gene on the X chromosome, and so if you're a man and your mother's father was bald, there's a good chance that you inherited the gene to also be bald. I think that's unlikely that lengthening telomeres is going to prevent that kind of baldness or grow or reverse that kind of baldness. But there's other things that cause baldness, and if it's related to short telomeres, then I would anticipate, yeah, no data yet, no studies have been done, but absolutely I would expect to see that hair would come back. But I think each person has to test it out on themselves unless they know exactly why they're bald already. But if they don't know, try it, because if they're bald because the skin cells in their hair follicle cells had short telomeres, then there's a good chance that they can bring their hair back, I would imagine. I can't say that for certain.
And what I can say to that too is when we first had the TAM818 and we were playing with it in formulations, bald friends, and we were asking them to rub the serum on their heads for us. But it was so difficult to kind of measure any response there. They weren't really consistent in how they used it, and there was absolutely no hair there. And they had gone bald quite young. So as Bill's saying, it may not be age-related at all. But in terms of a product to use, because nobody wants to be rubbing a serum in the roots of their hair, when the oil-free spritz comes out, that would be a great product to use to simply be patting your hair where it's thinning and be spraying that on, because it's going to be a lot more pleasant to use than rubbing a serum into the roots of your hair. I have another question here. Can 818 be ingested? Now, we don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to see if Bill wants to add anything more, but I do have a very funny little anecdote. I was having a meeting with someone a couple months ago, a doctor in America, not Bill, and he said, by the way, your product tastes awful. I said, I'm sorry, what product? Thinking he had confused me for someone who had an ingestible product. He goes, your serum, it tastes really bad, but I've been trying it anyway. So I was quite surprised by that. But Bill, what are your thoughts about ingesting TAM818 and the future of that?
Well, as you said, we have not tested that for ingestion yet, and we would have to do a lot of safety studies and stuff like that first. But it's, right now we don't know, but I would imagine that if it does survive the stomach and get into the blood, it would offer tremendous benefits. But again, I do not recommend anybody try that, especially when it's in the serum, because it might actually make you quite sick. But right now it's designed to work on skin, and I have heard that there are studies being done. Maybe Rachel could validate that, or there's talks about doing studies to see if it can be ingested. There's talk of doing clinical studies, but I don't think they're underway yet. Rachel, are they underway yet?
Well, kind of. So when Bill throws that question to me, it's because Chase Life Extension Foundation, as we've mentioned, has the license for TAM818, and we've really pledged ourselves in a partnership with Serum Sciences to take over the commercialization of TAM818 and any marketing of it. So yes, of course, we're really interested to see if TAM818 could be the beginning of an oral supplement which cures aging in an entire body. So we're in very, very early stages of that. You can hear this hot off the press. Just 2 days ago, we took some control blood to the Auckland University to have that tested, and they're currently seeing if their machinery and equipment can detect TAM818 inside the bloodstream. But like I said, this is really very, very early days. But we would like to think that if TAM818 is proving to induce telomerase in a human body and in blood, that within the next 2 to 3 years we'll be able to have a natural product which does the exact same thing as TAM818, and at that strength as well, because currently, as Bill mentioned, the natural telomerase inducers are very, very mild. They're nowhere near 16%. So my company, Chase Life Extension Foundation, in conjunction with Serum Sciences, is looking to do that, and that's very, very exciting. So stay posted. We, of course, will let you know if we have any further developments there, but that really is the way that this technology is going. Hey, I have another question here. Thank you for all the questions, everybody, from Inna in Melbourne. How does One Truth work on diminishing hyperpigmentation? And I can't explain the pathways it takes to do that, because we simply haven't been able to look at that in depth. But what we do know is that it does work. And my easiest way of explaining that is when you are using One Truth 818 topically, it induces telomerase in the cells because it does get into the cells. You express telomerase and your cell becomes younger. Now, if you think of a younger skin doesn't scar like an older skin. It doesn't express melanin like an older skin. It does express collagen and elastin and makes more hyaluronic acid. So by making your cells younger, they start behaving like a younger skin again. So you literally are just reversing and undoing all of that pigmentation. And that's a big thing that we saw through the clinical medical trials in Italy, and also right in front of our very eyes in the New Zealand trials. And obviously we get a lot of feedback from people all over the world who are using One Truth, who have really diminished their pigmentation. Interestingly, sometimes it's hormonal pigmentation as well, particularly chloasma caused predominantly by women having babies. It's hormonal. So in my eyes, there was really no reason for that to be reversed by making the cells younger, because if you hadn't have had a baby, you wouldn't have that pigmentation. It wasn't particularly age-related. So the way to explain it, I think, is just that your cell is behaving like a younger cell, which wouldn't have expressed that melanin. Would you agree with that, Bill?
I've got absolutely no experience in that whatsoever, but what you just described sounds like exactly what I would have speculated. We'll find out. I actually hadn't heard until just now that it actually does work on hyperpigmentation.
Yeah, very, very well. And you know, it's to do with the sun and to do with hormones. And One Truth 818 is reversing all that pigmentation as well too. So and that's my speculation on why it works. I can't say that in a scientific sense, because we haven't followed that chemical pathway to find out exactly why it's reversing that pigmentation, but it definitely is. Thank you from Ike Rodriguez. When you get a result of 16%, is this number in contrast to the natural rate of aging? And is the number concentration dependent?
Okay, so that's a question for me?
Yes, sorry, I'm just trying to understand the next part of the question. They also ask if it's different substances have different biological pathways inducing telomerase.
I can answer all three of those questions. Okay, so as Rachel responded earlier, referred to earlier, telomere shortening and lengthening is like a tug of war. And if you imagine you got 1,000 people pulling to shorten to cause the telomeres to get shorter, and you balance that with 16 people pulling it to get longer, you're actually still having telomere shortening because the people pulling are losing the tug of war, but at least they're slowing down those 100 people. So you got 16 pulling to lengthen, 100 pulling to shorten. You're still losing, but you're losing at a shorter rate. We've done a lot of studies using gene therapy to be able to quantitate how much telomerase is needed to actually cause the tug of war to be a tie. And so we call that, so when we find a drug, or let's say if we found a drug or natural product that induced that much telomerase, we'd give that chemical a score of 100. So that means the tug of war is a tie. So it's not so much relative to aging as much as it is to how much telomerase are we producing relative to how much is needed to cause that tug of war to be a tie. And so we're at 16%. The second part of that question was, is it concentration dependent? It is concentration dependent, but when we say 16%, that's the maximum. Okay, so every drug, whenever you test any kind of drug in any kind of assay, you'll find when you graph it, you'll find that it increases linearly and then starts to level off, and then you actually find it to drop. Okay, that's true. That's a dose curve you find for every kind of chemical you ever test in any kind of assay. So what we do when we look at this dose curve, we find out where it starts to level off. And in the case of, so we find what kind of dose causes that, and with the TAM 818 or C0314818, it levels off at about 16% of the height that we'd like it to be. And it doesn't get any higher when you go to higher concentrations. So the amount that's in the one truth 818 is actually just a little bit higher than that. So using more of it isn't probably going to give you higher telomerase activity. Using it more often might keep that telomerase activity at the high levels that it is. So I wouldn't try to start putting a lot of it on. I think Rachel said that in jest earlier, but using it more often could have a chance of actually keeping the telomerase levels high. And the last part of the question essentially is, okay, so we have, as I mentioned, we had tested over 400,000 different chemicals, and our strongest one was C0314818. But we found 900 other different chemicals too, and we imagine that they do work by different pathways. We could take the 900 chemicals and we could find, just looking at their structure, that they represent 37 different families of chemicals. And so we have these 900 all worked into these 37 families. One of the things that we'd like to do is we'd like to try mixing them to see if they actually will give us synergistic activity or like even additive activity. But again, that's a super expensive experiment to do, and we have to wait for the funding to come in. But yeah, we do hope that that's the case, in which case we can get a lot higher levels of telomerase activity in one truth 818, but then it would probably be called one truth 818 and 1079. So it would have a different name, but we just have to see. We won't know until we try.
Great.
This is all brand new science. Everybody's got to be aware of that. Anybody using one truth 818 is on the cusp of absolute brand new science, and so you're actually participating in a study when you do it, because we want to hear from everybody how well it's working. All right, thanks. Rachel?
Yeah, and the great thing is too, you know, for my little old company down here in New Zealand, the land of the hobbits, as Bill likes to call us, the studies that we commissioned to have done, actually those independent lab tests, are the most extensive studies ever done of topical telomerase induction ever. You know, so it's really great that we've done that, and that is in our product, and that's what One Truth 818 is. What Bill was saying before leads into Mike Rodriguez's question, which is, have we tried phytosome technology to increase the score of herbal extracts, and that's complexation with phospholipids. Now, Mike, the liposomal delivery system that we actually use for the TAM 818 that we modified from the CZ3411818 is actually a phospholipid base. So it's interesting that you should ask that question. We didn't find that it increased the 16% score, but it definitely was the same score but with a better delivery system dermally. It's really hard to test what the score is once it gets into a real human being. I mean, Bill has access to skin cells in a petri dish, but once it's actually inside the dermis, there aren't many people who want to have their faces hole punched to then donate those skin punches to someone to be doing any tests with them. And as Bill mentions too, it's very, very expensive to do that kind of thing. We rather would, doing all the testing that we have done, when we do create revenue and income from One Truth 818, it goes straight to Bill for research into further anti-aging. So whether or not we decide to backtrack a little bit and keep on testing more on the skin, or whether Bill drives forward and ahead to making those stronger telomerase inducers, that's probably the way we're going to go, just to keep on looking for those stronger telomerase inducers, like we mentioned before, eventually leading to what will be a cure for aging for humans. Now it looks like we may have been able to serve all of those questions now, which is fantastic, but I have one more question which I've saved for the last. Bill's talked about funding. I've talked about the giving you a bit of an insight into the tests that my company is about to do with Bill as well. But Lisa Logan says, how far away are you from finding a way to reverse aging, Bill?
It's again, I did address that a little bit. It's more funding than it is time. If the global financial crisis of 2008 hadn't hit, we'd already see Betty White walking out on stage looking 24 years old again, in my opinion. But the global financial crisis has shut down research, not just mine, but everybody I know, because research is actually quite expensive. So when we get the funding that we need to actually continue our research at the level we were doing before 2008, I would say we're 1 to 3 years away from doing that. And I want to caution that I don't believe that it's going to be the only thing that needs to be done, but I do believe that lengthening or finding a way to lengthen telomeres is something that absolutely has to be done, because there's no question about the fact in the scientific literature that telomere shortening does limit the lifespan of our cells and therefore us. And so if we can find a way to overcome that, that will allow us to possibly live longer. I don't know how long. I wouldn't be surprised if we live to be 150, 250. I don't know. But you know, but I do believe that we are going to run into other obstacles like oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction that are also going to be affecting us at a probably slower rate than the telomeres do, but we have to solve those problems too. And so I just think that, you know, if I can get another 30 years added to my life just from telomeres, and then that's going to give me another 30 years to try to figure out how to solve some of those other problems. So we might be trying to figure out ways of actually lengthening lifespan in chunks moving forward and forward, but as long as we can move at a faster rate than we're aging, we should be able to stay ahead of that curve, and all of us be able to live very long and healthy lives, beginning in about 1 year after we get the funding. And I'm looking forward to One Truth 818 sales providing us that funding.
Yeah, and just on that, Bill, you know, on a business level and a personal level, I'm so proud to give, and we make it very public, we give 40% of our revenue, that's not profit, but of our revenue from the sales of One Truth straight back to Sierra Sciences to go towards the research for the cure for aging. So let me just say at this point, if you would like to be stocking One Truth in your anti-aging skincare clinic or medical facility and be helping to advance this movement towards curing aging and all age-related diseases, if you'd like to say goodbye to all of them, there is a big button on the screen, a big purple button that says Learn How Here. So we would love it if you would want to join the handful of stockists that we already have in Australia. Click the Learn How Here button, and all over the world, but I know predominantly there are many Australians on this call today. And we'll put you through. We've got a great offer to all of you business owners who are listening today, and the offer is actually for area exclusivity. So if you come through to us today, we can guarantee you that you'll be the only stockist in your area to have One Truth 818 Serum with Dr. Bill Andrews' TAM 818 technology. So big purple button says Learn How Here. At this point, I would really like to thank everybody for joining us on this call. We love the questions because the interest in the science is so phenomenal. As Bill explained perfectly, if you are involved with telomere biology and with One Truth 818, you are at the forefront of groundbreaking science, and I congratulate you for being interested enough in your profession and your lives to be here to hear about that. So thank you very, very much to Dr. Bill Andrews for your knowledge and your participation today. We really appreciate that. And also a big thank you to my dear friend Catherine Kennard, the One Truth 818, for being here to share your story with us today, and also for sharing your beautiful face with us when it comes to putting 818 out there on the map. My pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Now, for those of you who are wanting more, you've had many emails from the One Truth 818 Australia team. You've got their contact details and their phone numbers, so feel free to contact them. If there are any more questions, they actually will fire them through personally to myself or Bill. So we're always open and available to talk through to you. If there's one thing I know about Bill, he loves nothing more than talking about telomere biology. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. In fact, I love answering questions, so don't hesitate to send me any and all questions.
Great. Thank you. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to the next time. Everyone have a great day. Bye. Bye-bye.